Welcome to the Sunday's Life class, April 13th, 2025, and we are here on, at least in our Christian tradition, Palm Sunday. So here in Nashville, we have been admiring adorable pre-Easter outfits of little kids this morning, waving palm branches in preparation for our holiday. And you may be of other faiths or no faiths listening in, but it's been a really, really adorable parade this morning. And if you don't know what Palm Sunday is, this is when we pause and we reflect on Jesus' arrival in Jerusalem. And we really get an incredible look at how what is the King of Kings, or the expected great Jewish warrior, at least by the people, to come into town and save them from everything, comes in as the most humble of men on a donkey. And so it is quite a spectacle, and he's in full knowledge of his crucifixion to come. So this is where we are celebrating this morning, and I'd like to use the words of Thomas Merton as our prayer this morning, and let us just breathe to our breathing as we listen to this prayer. And as you just recall, feet on the ground, uncrossed. And instead of us doing a 3-4-5 this morning, let us just be conscious of our inhale and our exhale as we absorb these words. Our Creator, give me humility in which alone is rest, and deliver me from the pride which is the heaviest of burdens. Possess my whole heart and soul with the simplicity of love. Occupy my whole life with the one thought and the one desire of love, that I may love not for the sake of merit, not for the sake of perfection, not for the sake of virtue, not for the sake of sanctity, but for you alone. And may this day bring Sabbath rest to my heart and my home. May God's image in me be restored, and my imagination in God be restored. May the gravity of material things be lightened, and the relativity of time slow down. May I know the grace to embrace my own finite smallness in the arms of God's infinite greatness. And may God's word feed me and his spirit lead me into the week and into this life to come. Amen. Just giving you a little look ahead, next week is Easter week, and so we will not be meeting as so many families have brunch plans and family in town next week. But we will be resuming the following week, and today I'm going to be doing part 2 of reparenting ourselves and doing some of the parts on the inner child. So we've got a great part 2 right here and a review of last week. I wanted to let you know, though, in the first 3 Sundays of May, we'll take a little break from this series, and I'd like to do a series of 3 special requests that I've been amassing from people. They're kind of standalone topics, but one will be abandonment and rejection. One will be a special presentation on ADHD and some of the current findings on that, how rampant it is in our society, and then another one on estrangement and some current comments on how that is present so much in our society between families and adult children as never before. So just to give you a little prep on the next few Sundays. Last week, we talked about a lot of characters that play parts to keep our inner child safe. And I hope it gave you more of a concrete understanding of just how beautifully that we are put together and how many protective systems that we have to keep our wounded inner child safe. I think that all of you all, at least in our Nashville classroom here in the Bay Room at Woodmont Christian this morning, were here last week. And for those of you who did not tune in, you'll be able to go back to part 1, which will be April the 6th, download on the podcast. But we left off at a particular point in which we were talking about getting wounded as a child. And when we got really wounded, we retained memories of when we got hurt. And if those were really, really deep, those ended up in little pockets sort of off of our wounded inner child that we call the exiles. They were so painful, in fact, that we just shifted them off to the side and shifted parts of us off to the side that we deemed inaccessible. Very heavy, heavy negative memories. Burdens, in fact. I remember one exercise at a workshop given by Claudia Black, who's a very prolific recovery writer. Don't talk, don't tell, and so forth, and about family secrets. And she did a workshop with us as a group of therapists, and we were talking about exiles, and everyone was to bring a suitcase, and we all put our baggage in the center of the room to give us a concrete idea of just how heavy it would be for one little child to hold an airport room size of lost baggage, and we all kind of got what we might have been carrying as a child. So very, very heavy right here. But what also came out of those wounding events is a belief system that is mainly lies. Lies. So often our burden are the memories and the emotions, negative emotions of the events, plus lies that we had to adopt. So, for example, if your mom at some point might have said, having another friend over, and let's say you were hiding in the next room, and may have heard her say, yeah, I wish we'd never had children. That was a real mistake when, came along. And this is overheard. What else could you believe as a result of that? Other than, I'm different, I'm not loved, I'm not good enough, am I really wanted? Those types of things. And that may have been so far from your experience, but you may know someone that actually happened to. So that's the heavy load that the exile carries. Now, the exile has protectors that we talked about last time. Firefighters over here and managers over here. The managers are proactive. They want to prevent bad things happening in the first place. But once the bad stuff happens like that, the firefighters come in and try to fight that. So the managers have a great need to be in control, and they want to prevent. There are a lot of things with the managers that are interesting, because if you look at this little umbrella that I drew down here. This is like a manager umbrella. And managers can have different specialty areas that they try to control. Like, for example, some people, control areas show up like controlling the environment. You know, somebody, I knew someone one time where every single product that came into their home had to be green, eco-friendly, and that's really all that they could talk about. As long as they could determine that there were no toxins around them, they were safe. Another one was very, very, very people-pleasing. As long as she knew that there was nothing that she had done that day or last week that could possibly cross somebody or get them mad at her, she was safe, and she would run through everything that she had done or said like a video in her mind and process that incessantly with her girlfriends. Some are constantly taking care of others. So their deal is, if I take care of you, if I please you, then you're not going to want to hurt my inner child. So you can see all of this constant activity out here on the outside with her covering every need of another person. That was her protector, her manager. Others, perfectionists, and they really believed this was their lie. If I do everything perfectly, nothing bad will happen and my inner child won't get hurt. Another person could be experienced very differently. I will become negative, critical. I will constantly be judging everything, evaluating everything, finding fault, finding danger. Because the lie here is, if I can spot danger in advance, I can prevent bad things from happening. So we experience that person as being very fearful, very negative, super risk averse. And sometimes too, people that are like that, you'll observe them not ever trying anything new. They are so change or progress resistance. And then another type of person you might experience is apathetic or very indifferent. And they're really not. They've just been hurt so much that they have just absorbed their own lie that if I just hide away down here, that nobody will notice me, and then I will not get hurt. So it's really interesting how you can observe these characteristics, and maybe, just maybe, they all have to do with this piece right here. What if you're not really seeing that real person? What if, as you develop compassion and insight, you're just seeing the adaptations or the archetypes? What if you're not really seeing that person? Well, I think those of us who have worked in the healing field for a long time know from just seeing the transformation that can occur over years in people opening up, that often after they open up, there's not much resemblance to what you start out with. These are protective mechanisms with people. Also, too, another lie is, I need to be a super overachiever. I have to be the best at everything. I have to drive myself to be the best at everything. And that is how I'm going to keep bad things from happening. And it goes the other way, too. I'm going to be an underachiever. I'm just going to be super passive. I will never assert my will, my needs, my desires. And I'll even be pessimistic about everything that will justify me just staying here and not trying anything. And then others could be, I'm just going to numb myself constantly. I'm always going to have a distraction because I don't want to feel. I'm going to disconnect myself from my emotions. I'm just going to shut down that part of myself. So there are people who basically will say, if I don't allow myself to feel, that's the lie, then nothing can hurt me. Another type of manager that you will see, and I can see myself in all of these different parts, so, they're mixed, they're different parts. Another type is the inner critic, and we've talked a little bit about this. This is where the lie is if I will find and be looking for every little flaw in myself, if I just make it to where I am so hard on myself so I can be aware of it, then I can use that to motivate myself to be perfect. And therefore, I can get to the mistake I'm making before anybody else sees it. What a hard way to live life. What a lot of stress. So those are just examples of all kinds of manager strategies that if I do all these things in my life, that I can keep myself from being safe, preventing bad things from happening like they did at one time. So I hope you see that sounds like it's a good plan. However, it doesn't work. It always backfires, and we end up creating more pain. So one of the characteristics, and Tim Fletcher says this so clearly in his talk on this very topic, he says, you notice that they can be extremely rigid in their movement. Like everything is just up from here. So you'll often, I've had several talks with orthodontists about TMJ and where that comes from, and teeth grinding, and there's just a whole host of symptoms that often will come with this. It's kind of interesting if you study that. Talks with massage and bodywork people about the fascia and the hardening of the muscles in certain areas that the therapist will ask people about their life, and what their personality characteristics are. Just that constant tension over time, over decades and decades, mounting up in the body is kind of what characterizes them. So going back to what the fear is, the first fear is that the inner child will get hurt again. But if they get hurt, that goes into another fear. And the other fear is that their emotions are just going to flood out all their pain. They're just going to be dysregulated, and they're just going to disappear into a black hole, and it'll be impossible to deal with. And I might get stuck there, and I might not be able to get out of there. Well, those are Tim Fletcher's words, and I will have to say that is exactly how I felt when I got really sick and only had about 2 weeks left to live with my alcoholism. And they told me that I had to begin to open up, that it was the only way, that I had to begin to look at the stuff. I had to go here. And my managers and my firefighters and my adaptations were just kicking up a storm. Not only was I afraid that I wasn't going to be able to see this clearly, I was denying that they were there. I was angry. I told my team of therapists when I was in inpatient treatment, I said, what gives you the right to see into me? How do I even know those things are down there that you're talking about? I was a case. Walked up to the front desk in the nurse's station, grabbed a guy by his tie, and I said, don't you know who I am? I had been referring to them for 20 years, patients. You would think I would have just been a hopeless case. If this can work for me, this can work for anybody. This is the way This is the ticket. This is not about going back and digging up your past. This is just simply about knowing what you're made out of so that you can possess yourself and go on into your future and adjust some things. Like what's under the hood of the car, for Pete's sake. You know, so often when I get a reaction from somebody, it's like, I'm not going back into my past and digging up stuff. I'm going, you don't even know who you are. You don't even know who you're made out of. Don't you want to at least look at some basic parts and some basic tools? No. Okay. Next. So it's just really not weird ooey gooey stuff. It's just some pretty basic stuff. But the fear of looking at it is like the fear of death if you have absolutely no hope of anything after that. The fear that I would somehow be annihilated was just that bad for me. I did not want to give up any of these. But what I learned is a lot of these things were good. I could keep a lot of them to help me survive. I just needed to make friends with them and do this very, very gently. So, helping the inner child get healthy, moving out of this safe little place of isolation, trusting other people who had done their work and had helped a lot of other people do their work. What happens when I get triggered? Okay? Being able to see myself if I got triggered. Was I crazy when I got triggered? No, I was not crazy. I was getting triggered. For the very first time, what would happen if those managers and firefighters didn't get in there and shut me down? Would the person I was in front of leave? Would they get angry at me? Would they accept me in their presence? And I learned that I could be loved, I could be held, I could be cheered on. Good, Anne, you're showing some of your true self. It was a whole other world. People could handle me that were trained to handle me. And I found that it was a basic human right to be able to show all of my colors in the right space. And if they could handle me, oh my gosh, maybe God could handle me too. Maybe this is what he was looking for the whole time. Maybe God really did want me instead of the nice little cleaned up Sunday school girl with polished shoes. You know, maybe there was a chance, but I had to have a different God. I had to have a different image. I had to do it all differently. So, there is a line in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that I think just has a lot to do with just human nature. And it's a phrase that says, if only we could manage well. And what that means is this false self that covers up most people is that we're only in touch with our managers, this outside of the false self here. We never really get down into what needs to be healed. What are the compulsive drives and adaptations in managers and firefighters that cover up our real needs, emotions, desires, and along with that, the playful wonder child, the healthy child, the child who is capable of unconditional love within us, to be integrated into our adult self. So if we start healing and growing, we're going to change. And the fear is that we might get introduced to some unknown variables about what we might be like. What might I be like? I might surprise myself. I might not know myself. So instead of looking at it through a lens of wonder and adventurous expectation and trust, most people respond to that with horrific fear or terror. So it's kind of like the verse out of 1 John about love and fear. Perfect love banishes, whatever the translation would be. Perfect love casts out all fear. Well, we cannot do that in and of ourselves. We must have spiritual help. We must rely on something greater than ourselves. I call that power God, or my spiritual strength, my Creator. As I work the 12 steps to do that, there are many different ways to say that. So we feel like we just are not going to be able to handle those changes. We feel like we just need life to remain the same. So what this manager ends up becoming is like a jailer. You know, when this fear comes up, the manager's like, lock down, I'm going to keep this inner child in prison. And that's the safest way of protecting them. This is when we encounter resistance on our recovery journey. So the firefighters here, they're the ones that react when the inner child gets triggered and is in pain. That's like a big fire has broken out. I have got to get rid of that fire, and I will do whatever is necessary to make that pain go away. It's only short term. It's like a limbic brain. I need instant relief, instant gratification. What does that sound like? Our whole society now. There's a larger metaphor here. So instant gratification is the focus of the firefighters. They are not able to play the tape through to the end. So the managers can look at the firefighters and they can create more damage than you can actually solve. You know, they're preventing, they're reacting. Things that might make you feel better in the moment, but there's just a conflict in your brain. They're working against each other. So if you ever wonder why you feel so horrible, these are some of the forces that are at play. So you can see all kinds of different firefighters here. So if you look at the world of addictions, let's just numb right away. You know, we go to food, sex, alcohol, shopping. It can have an element of let's soothe ourselves, but that can also have a self-harm element. I was talking with a gentleman this last week about when he first noticed cutting behaviors, you know, in his boy, and this was years ago, and there was no treatment available in those early days, and you know, just talking about the pain of his journey as a parent, you know, what was going on, and they didn't have anybody talking about these things, and he's become a real spokesman for this, you know, now. Just so his son couldn't feel the emotional pain, didn't know how to express it. So you can do that, or maybe just outward distractions, getting busy doing stuff, distracted by stuff, disassociating, using anger and rage as the way to overpower pain. A lot of people would rather feel anger than to feel the pain. So I'll go to anger. Maybe I'll just rebel, I'll lash out, I'll be defiant. Go to thrill seeking, get an adrenaline rush happening, then we won't feel the pain. Or another alternative for some kids is let's immediately lie about everything. Let's become deceptive, and that'll help with the pain. Or as we've talked about in another class, manipulation, manipulating others to make the pain go away. And then we have other behaviors, sexual behaviors, flirting, acting sexual, getting the attention of others, doing whatever we can to get a positive response or feeling of power or control. There's many, many things under this whole umbrella. So firefighters are these very impulsive limbic brain responses. Let's just put the fire out now with whatever method we have to use. So, I've mentioned that I identify with, a lot of those different things in my background, and you have probably had a couple of those perk within you as you've been listening, or certainly if you've had a family member that's come down heavy on one or more of those. So I want to go to 6 steps that this IFS or internal family system has developed as the path to healing. And I'm not going to go into much detail, but there's a lot of value in understanding these. So the first 3 steps are designed to help you make distinctions between the exiles, the managers, and the firefighters. So here you see them having 3 different roles. So the exile, the inner child, the managers, and the firefighters, if you just think about that one part, how you experience that part when it is in action. If you just focus on one, how do I experience, like the manager, when it is in action? What goes on inside me when that part takes control? How close do I feel to that part, to understanding it, to trusting it? So understanding those 3 parts. So I've spent some time with my manager, my exile, and my firefighter. Just with those types of questions, going, what's an example of that within me? Do I feel detached from it? Do I feel close to it? How do I know when it's working within me? And this has taken a lot of time, but I'm almost now where I can kind of, when I get triggered, I'm on the alert, and I can feel them coming in and going to work. I go, what am I afraid to feel that's coming from the exile? Why do I feel so heavy? And then I can have memories come to me that I need to acknowledge. And new memories continue to come to me the more I pray about it and that I'm open. But I can handle them now without dragging them through days. And then I will talk with those memories with my coach, about those memories with my coach through the LIFT program, and then use what I'm learning in order to process them. And it is just an amazing healing experience. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Now on the 4th step, how do I feel about that part? What are my emotions about that part? Do I hate that part? Do I like that part because it gets me attention? Do I have a love-hate relationship with that part? Tim Fletcher says what we need to understand is that we're never going to try and replace a firefighter or manager until I begin to see that it's causing me more harm than good. As long as I still think it's a good thing in my life, it's not hurting anybody or anyone, I'll have a certain level of denial about it. I will not want to change or reparent that part of myself. I can give you an example of this. One of my managers would be to know what was going to happen, at different times of the day so that I could prepare myself for it. And then starting a number of years ago, I would realize what that was doing. It was keeping me from being in the present moment. So I, on purpose, if I keep firing that manager, going, no, you don't need to do that. You are right here. I don't want to hear about what's going on at 3 this afternoon or 4 this afternoon, or especially if someone else's energy goes, aren't you worried about what's going to happen at 3 or at 4? And I try to just step back if other people try to load me up with anxiety about, what could possibly happen negatively in other parts of the day. Before, I would have just thought that was part of my manager's duty, was to worry with them or to calm them down about the other part of the day. And now I've learned a lot about presence. So that would be something that I have fired. So another thing is, how effective is my role in protecting the inner child and helping it heal? If I didn't have to do that job anymore, would that make me happy? Am I getting tired of doing that job? How old is that role? Well, maybe since I was 8 years old, really think about that. How long have I been doing that to myself? So I'm building a relationship with understanding why that firefighter or manager is there, when it developed. So what I might have is a part of me where there's a lot of anxiety and a need to worry. Would I be willing to give up my job of worrying about everything? Oh, well, that could be a relief. I'm scared to give up that job. What would happen if I gave up that job? What if I didn't lean into everybody's worry, take care of them about future events, and just was present into myself? This was a big deal. So what I found in my case was that if my parents looked to me to give them peace and problem solve from an early age, because they didn't know, then I'd been doing something, for decades that was just really part of my physiology. I didn't know how to not do that. So I better get with people and learn how to not do that. But I had to ask for help. So Tim Fletcher says, you're beginning to understand what role does worrying play in your life. Well, the role that it had in my life was it kept me safe. It gave me a role in the family. It kept I thought it kept my parents safe. I thought it kept the home safe. So it was even more beyond me. And I could always have the plan ready in case there were disaster. So it was a big deal. It was really a big deal. And so my lie was, if I didn't do that, no one was safe. So it was a bigger safety issue. I'm just trying to give you an example from personal life. Well, the truth was, if I kept doing that, I was going to lose my own life, because that was just coming down on me so heavy. And that's why they say that people with extreme codependency, generally it's more dangerous for them than somebody who's an active drug addict, because there's no relief, the heaviness. So there's more suicides attempted in extreme codependency and depression, because that is just like trying to hold up the universe, that blackness, and then coming down on you. So getting rid of these adaptations that all fall in on the inner child is probably one of the most important things that we can do. I want to wrap that up for today. And I hope that hasn't been too heavy for you, but it's all about liberation and shining the light. And just like at the end of the day, if there's things that are weighing on you, trying to go to bed well by putting those aside, whether it's writing those down, whether it's just lightening your load with a scripture or a meditation, that those are things you can't do anything about. It's not up to you. It's just not up to you. I mean, we are to be light and free. The serenity prayer, have that by your bedside. You know, we just don't need to carry the responsibilities that we think that we need to. And bad things happen. And often in childhood, we are saddled with super adult responsibilities. We're told things that shouldn't have been said, or maybe we're not meant to hear. And we still carry those within us. So, as you're going through the week, you know in your heart what some of those things would be and what you need to release. And you might jot some of those down and know that there's a process by which you can be relieved of those, and we'll begin to continue to talk about that. Thanks for being with us this morning.